So,
do you want our picture too? Here, hold on.
oh yeah.
Okay, we brought our buddies with us. These are our favorite.
So, we come by St. John's once in a while, and one thing I like about St. John's is that when you walk into the auditorium, there's saints everywhere, or the hallways, there's saints everywhere. And it's exactly how our house is set up. Like you walk in there and you're it's all just everywhere.
We mix them in with our family pictures.
Yeah, so it makes it's like, hey, this, Saint Gemma, she's in there with the kids and everything. So, I am nervous because I'm probably not the. I feel absolutely inadequate to be, teaching other people about married life. So, or even giving a talk about married life. But I'll do my best, and I'll try to, give you guys some pointers and something. My name's Jameson Scarlata. This is my wife Julie, and we're supposed to be giving you guys a talk about living the vocation of a married person as a Catholic. So, in everything we do as a Catholic, let's start with prayer. All right. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen. Hail Mary,
full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Saint Michael the Archangel,
defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the other losers who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls.
Virgin most powerful, pray for us. St. Louis and Zelly Martin,
pray for us.
In the Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sanctus. All right, so Julie's going to give a talk about her vocation a little bit, and then I'll give a talk, and then we'll wrap up with some thoughts and stuff. And if there's questions, we'll open it up. All right.
Okay, so I'm just going to kind of tell you where I came from and kind of give you a rundown of how I got to where I am. I grew up in Chantilly, Virginia. I was raised in a solidly Catholic family. My parents are still married. I have 4 sisters, and we all went to Catholic school from kindergarten through 12th grade, thanks to the sacrifices made by my parents. I'm married to Jameson Scarlata, and I can honestly say that despite my solid Catholic upbringing, I remained mostly spiritually ignorant and clueless until 1998, which is the year that I met my husband. That was the year that I graduated from college. During most of my 4 years in college, I dated a guy. The relationship was not a good one. It was superficial, destructive, worldly, unhealthy, and I spent the majority of my time wishing, hoping, and naively expecting this guy to miraculously become the responsible husband and father that I one day hoped to have. I'm convinced that only through the patient prayers of my parents and sisters, I found myself free from the relationship shortly before I graduated in the spring of 1998. I experienced a profound return to the practice of my Catholic faith through the sacrament of confession and the helpful catechesis of my smarter young sisters who had remained faithful to Christ. With a newfound faith, I set out to find a good Catholic man. Remembering the epic failure of the relationship that I had in college, I decided I needed to find a guy that fit the good Catholic husband and father job description. I found a guy who was older than me, a lawyer, a model Catholic. He was the guy who bowed before receiving communion when no one else did in our parish of 12,000 families. He was a patent lawyer who helped abortion protesters in court when they got themselves in trouble. We dated. I tried my hardest to make it work, but I just didn't feel anything for him at all. My head said that he should be the guy, but my heart just wasn't there. I broke up with him and decided to visit my old college friends one weekend. I'll spare you the details, but it was starkly obvious to me that my old boyfriend and the people that I called my friends were immature and completely disinterested in anything but themselves and having a good time. After having spent the summer working a job and trying to be a good Catholic, it was overwhelming how mistaken I had ever been to think that these were my friends. I felt so defeated. I remember sitting at the dinner table at my parents' house that night and saying out loud, I literally said this out loud, I get it, God. I get the message. You don't want me to be married. I'll stay single. I read you loud and clear. Whatever you say, I give up. In hindsight, it almost seems like God was just waiting for me to relinquish control and give him my life. The next morning, we went to a family event, which, by the way, I did not want to go to, and I met my future husband. I am so thankful that God gently showed me the stark contrast between my choices and his. I met a man who was honest, polite, respectful, hardworking, Catholic, and fun. They do exist, girls, so they're worth waiting for. Don't settle. Our relationship was interesting. As we got to know each other, I discovered that Jamie had been discerning the priesthood before we met and was still privately discerning his vocation. I think this is when I realized that I actually loved him, the way that God tells us to love, not the selfish way the world does. Here I was waiting around for him to choose me or not, but as much as I wanted God's answer to be me, I was willing to step aside to allow what was best for Jamie. I realized that I truly loved him when I was willing to see him go as long as it was what was best for him and was God's will. He proposed after 9 months, and we spent about a year in Catholic marriage prep. During this time, in the long drives between Maryland and Virginia, because he lived in Maryland, to visit each other, we prayed together and discussed our plans for our lives and how committed we both were to living out our marriage as a vocation according to Christ's plan in the Catholic Church. We talked about everything, like who would balance the checkbook, how we would remain open to having children, that Jamie would work so that I could stay home with our children, how we would educate our kids, and that we were both in this for the long haul no matter what, and that we would always work through problems. Divorce was never an option. Our wedding mass was beautiful. We chose to respect the sacrament we had just received by not drinking alcohol at our reception. The last 17 years have been an incredible journey of spiritual growth and maturing. I was definitely naive about how marriage would be, even with all of the preparation. I think I somehow had a vision in my mind that being married would be like a scene from a movie, with him and I spending peaceful days in our little house and just enjoying each other's company. I was totally living in La La Land though, and it was a real eye-opener when we got back from our honeymoon and both of us returned to our jobs. Work. Yeah, that's a great word for summing up marriage. We conceived our first child a month after we were married. Another whoa, wait a minute moment came for me the first Thanksgiving that we were parents. Thanksgiving has always been one of my favorite holidays. I loved spending the day relaxing and enjoying the company of family and exploring and hiking on my uncle's 200-acre farm, while the moms and grandmas prepared the food and called us when it was ready. I remember feeling like I had just been given life in prison though, when I realized that Thanksgiving, that I was now one of the moms with a little baby and what this really meant for my freedom. This was only one of the many times that I would learn to die to myself in order to grow in holiness. I've always believed that with the pregnancy and birth of each of my 6 children, God has gently shown me how to practice a new virtue. My first one was dying to self. The second one was love. The third, humility. The fourth, trust. The fifth, faith. And the sixth, long-suffering. We have a tiny house. Marriage is beautiful, but not like a movie. It's hard work. There is a lot of poop. You have to endure suffering. You get to do the corporal and spiritual works of mercy on a daily basis. Feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, clothe the naked, visit the sick, counsel the doubtful, instruct the ignorant, comfort the sorrowful, forgive injuries and the big one, bear wrongs patiently. The work and the challenges have all been there from the beginning, just as they are for all married couples and families. But the most beautiful thing about living out this sacrament, this vocation in the Catholic faith, is the grace that Jamie and I have received and how it has allowed us to use all the messy stuff to grow in holiness. So I'm going to kind of change gears for a second, and I have a question for each of you, which you can kind of just think in your heads. Why are we here on earth? And the Catholic Church tells us why. To know, love, and serve God in this life and to be with him in the next. Our vocation Whatever it may be is the best way for us to achieve this. Did you know that in 6 of the sacraments, the priest is the minister? He is the channel which God uses to transmit sanctifying grace to the soul. The sacrament of marriage is the only one in which the ministers of the sacrament are the people receiving it. The man and woman are to each other the means of receiving God's sanctifying grace on their wedding day and each day afterward. They have the ability to literally help their spouse get to heaven. My vocation is to get Jamie's soul to heaven. His vocation is to help my soul get to heaven. And of course, together we work to get our children's souls to heaven as well. Nothing is more important than our sanctification. Please don't forget that no matter what vocation you're called to, your job is to know, love, and serve God in this life and be with Him in the next. Pray to know the vocation to which God is calling you. Pray for your future spouse. Don't listen to the lies the world feeds you. If you're living out your vocation properly, the world will reject you. They will. Don't give in to the lies that contraception is okay, that children are a burden, that abusing your sexuality won't harm you, that divorce is acceptable, or that so-called gay marriage is okay, or that the devil does not exist. Sister Lucia, one of the 3 Fatima visionaries, wrote, quote, "A time will come when the decisive battle between the kingdom of Christ and Satan will be over marriage and the family." Again, a time will come when the decisive battle between the kingdom of Christ and Satan will be over marriage and the family. And those who will work for the good of family will experience persecution and tribulation. But do not be afraid, because Our Lady has already crushed his head. Please pray for holy marriages. Thank you, and God bless each of you. And I'll turn it over to Jim.
There's a funny story in her when she came over that day to meet me. She came over with my family. Her grandfather was having his 80th birthday, and her cousins. Some of you might know him. Greg DiStefano, the DiStefanos, so Greg DiStefano. Yeah, that's his cousin.
We met across the street from their house.
He lived across the street from me, and that's so Italian families get together. But at any rate, my brother actually got the phone number of your sister. Mm-hmm. I got her phone number, and then the very next day, I mean, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, and tossed it, and she, I guess it was a couple weeks later or something. You asked your sister to.
I said, tell him to call me.
Yeah. So. I love our Catholic faith so much because it's so deep. I mean, the stuff that she said to you in her vocation story, there's so much. If you pick it apart, you'll find Catholicism in that. So deep, the catechism and stuff, I've labored over kind of giving this talk over, hey, what should I give you guys catechism and stuff from Holy Scripture and this and that, and yeah, I'm going to put some of that in there, and it's kind of embedded in some of the stuff I'm saying, but I'm not going to just sit here and quote you catechism all day long like I was originally planning to. So I'm pouring over and so I'd probably be disjointed. Hopefully I deliver something to you guys that you'll be able to use. But let me start with a joke. A CCD teacher asked her 2nd grade kids, hey, why do we need to be quiet in church? And the child raised her hand and said, hey, because everyone's sleeping. So in a sense, the child was right. Culturally, we are sleeping. We're all sleeping. And if you look back at just some statistics real quick, contraception was illegal in the U.S. until 1965. Contraception was illegal in the U.S. until 1965. The Supreme Court ruled in Griswold versus Connecticut that it was unconstitutional for the government to prohibit married couples from using birth control. So how many children having children is no longer the norm. So, one, and the selfishness in that using contraception, you can see. So 2016, the birth rate in the U.S. was the lowest it has ever been. There were 62 out of 1,000 women aged 15 to 44. There was only 62 births over that 1,000 women that were surveyed. No-fault divorce legalized in California in 1969. What does that mean? It means it's easier to get a divorce nowadays than to get out of your car note. For you to go to the bank and to work to get out of the car note, you have to jump through all kinds of hoops. But now, divorces, you can get them dime a dozen. And I'm sure some of you, like my family, my mom and dad, they got divorced. My biological mom and my biological dad got divorced. So I'm no stranger to, being affected by that grave sin. Abortion became legal in 1973. Everybody knows about that, Roe versus Wade. And then, most recently, so-called gay marriage legalized in 2015. So another statistic that was put out there was that 75% of young churchgoers, these are young kids that are going to church, believe that gay marriage is okay. So-called gay marriage. When you look at that and you kind of meditate on what that really means and the psychology of what that means, is that you're destroying what God has properly set up, that order. So, marriage rate, 6.9 per 1,000 total population. That's a CDC. That's a very low number. And out of that 6.9, half of those, 3.2, or almost half, of that 1,000 populations is getting a divorce. So half of marriages nowadays, marriages are already down on the down low, right? They're not happening. Half of those marriages that actually happen, people get divorced. We can see these numbers are all just numbers from a godless society. So So the vocation to married life is just a path or a means that I have chosen through careful discernment to a higher calling that each of us have. This higher calling comes in different ways and at different times in each of our lives. The higher calling is a call from God Himself to every one of you to be holy, to imitate Christ, to be like God in so much as to sanctify your life. He's asking you to become a saint. The goal of any vocation, whether it's the priesthood, married life, or religious life, or single life, the goal of that vocation is to love, serve God, Christ, with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. It's the Paschal mystery. Christ's passion lived out in your life. So I'll break down some of what the Catechism kind of talks about marriage, and then and throw some things in there as well. So the family is the domestic church. Everything starts with the family. Father Gerard Kelly, S.J., said, in the Christian dispensation, the family is a little church. That means that its aim is the salvation and sanctification of its members. And what does that mean, sanctification? It sounds like a great word, like, hey, I want to be a saint. And you see the saints that are on those walls in the auditorium and on your walls in the school here. What does that mean? And I'm not going to define that necessarily, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But it's something to start thinking about. What does it mean to be a saint? St. Paul says marriage, it's a great mystery. But he says the purpose of this sign, marriage, the sign, is to be an image of Christ's fidelity and love for his church. The union between a man and a woman points to the greater reality of the mystery of the union of Christ and his church. Christ is faithful forever. And if we acknowledge him, he will acknowledge us. But even if we deny him, he will remain faithful. And he cannot deny himself. He is always faithful. You can never get him to go back on his word. He is the rock. He's never changing. So some of the roles in the Catholic family is in what is it? It's meant by living this mini representation of the Catholic Church. So in that, Christ in Holy Scriptures and in the Catechism reads that the head of the household is the husband, and as Christ is to the church, he's the head. Wife is the church. The woman is the church, the spotless bride. And the children are the faithful members of the church. I'm gonna talk to. I'm the man in the house, so I can really speak to the guys in the room as to more than the women. So I kind of have a lot to say about to the guys. But so the father is the head of the church. He's the Christ in that domestic church. So what does that mean? For men, so guys, it's a battle, and this is really for everybody too, but guys, this is a battle. Every day we must go to battle. We must man up spiritually, mentally, and physically, but not without asking God for the grace, because it's not possible without his grace. Jesus calls us to be perfect. The only failure is when we tell ourselves that we're good enough, or we've gotten pretty good, or at that certain level, well, I'll be this good, and that's it. No, he said, be perfect. Like, you can continually be perfect. If you stop there, that's lukewarm. That's not a good spot. You can't ever stop. You have to, and the only way you can continue is with God's grace. And where do you get God's grace? Well, in marriage, there is grace from the sacrament, but from the sacraments as well. Confession, confession, communion, baptism, you received grace. All these give you grace to carry on. Confirmation. Adoration does that. I mistakenly said that as a sacrament, but it's important, and we'll get to that a little later. But love is for the sake of the other until you die. Love. Men, we are built for love. Men are built for love. And why do I say that? What is love? My favorite saint that I go to her all the time, we talk all the time. She's out on that wall. And what does it say about love? It's sacrifice. Every man in this room is built, is a warrior, is built, like he's got it inside him to love and sacrifice. True love is sacrifice. Love is giving your very best, your very last drop of blood, every bit of strength you have. Love is a commitment. It is a down deep gut check to say, yes, I can do this. And enter into that sacrificial love for another person. That other person in marriage is your wife, and your wife alone. It does, sacrifice does transmit, that will transmit to everyone else, but it's putting others first in everything and protecting them. Protecting them from what? From evil. From the evil that's trying to encroach and mess up what is holy. what's from God. The world will, as Julie told you, the world will tell you a man is one thing, and it's a lie. A man will love and sacrifice. That is how you get to heaven. How have I sacrificed in my life or in my marriage? There's some big points. When we first got married, I'm a union electrician, and working. It's a difficult job when you go out to the construction trade and you're humping 4-inch rigid pipe up and down, floors and doing construction work, manual labor all day. So I wanted to kind of get out of that and go to a job that my dream job at the time was to be a fireman. So I went and got a job as a fireman. I got this job, my dream job. I've been trying to get it since I came out of high school. I finally got my dream job, right? A few months after we got married, we have house payment, we have car payments, we just had a new child. And Julie just mentioned to you that we talked about how our marriage would be set up. Would she stay home? Would she homeschool? Would she not? What we would do? Who would be working? We talked about everything, the money, everything. In that, I made a promise that I would allow her to be able to stay home. Well, I came up to a point where I couldn't pay the bills with the fire department job that I had. I took a $45,000 pay cut, and that's a really big hit when you are the man sacrificing and trying to keep your wife and your children home and pay all the bills and care for all these people. So I had to drop my dream job and go back to the electrical trade. That was a huge sacrifice because think about, what you guys can, you kind of sort of have an idea what you want to go to, right? What you want to do in your heads. But think about getting that, having that right here, and then letting it go. But I said, yeah, no, I let it go. So that was a huge sacrifice early on in the marriage. Daily sacrifices, little things that I do, because you have to practice these little mortifications and things. We'll sit down to dinner, and we'll say prayers, we'll pray, and I'll make sure that every person, unbeknownst to them, I'll make sure that every one of my children and my wife take a bite of food first. Why? What does that mean? No, I'm starving, I'm hungry. I just came home and I worked a hard day, and I'm like, and the kids are running around and the table's set, and I can't get people to the table, and I'm like, let's just one bite. And what is that going to matter if I just take one bite or not? But it's a sacrifice, and that is what love is. That's what you have to do. You have to practice those little sacrifices, those daily little sacrifices that you think mean nothing. But it's just like when you go to train at the gym. You don't go to train and you don't start lifting 400 pounds and squatting 400 pounds. No, he's squatting like 100 pounds, if that. And he's training those muscles to be like, yep, I can do this. Or you start to do push-ups, you can do 7 push-ups. Okay, you're not trained. You want to get to be able to do 100 push-ups in a row, right? You don't go right off to 100 push-ups. You have to practice those small little sacrifices so that when the big ones come, you're able to say, yep, I'll do it. I'll pick up my cross and I will carry it. Because what is the man's job? We're talking about the Christ, the head of the family. What is his job? He is supposed to die to self. Die for your family. And if that means physically that I die to save their lives, then that's what I do. If it means that I wait to eat, then that's what it means. If it means that I let her get some rest because she's had a hard day, even though that I've had a hard day and she hasn't seen that, and I go and I take the kid to go change his diaper or her diaper, that's what it means. As a man, you have to, Christian families could turn society around. True Christian families could turn society around. But how do you make Christian families? It's the man's job to make the Christian's family. It's on your guys' shoulders. You guys, the men, have to be the spiritual, the physical, and the spiritual heads of your families. You guys have to decide to sacrifice. You guys have to say, I am going to pick up my cross and lead. Even if your family is not, it's kind of like you're going to battle, right? You're climbing up this hill, you're getting shot, bullets are coming down, and you pick up your weapon and you're moving up the mountain, and you look back and you say, come on, family, let's go. And you look back and they're behind you, and some of them are wavering. You have to be strong enough not only to hold your spot, reach back, grab them, and say, let's go. I'm not leaving you behind. We're moving up this mountain. Because that's what life is. That's what a family is. For that matter, that's what the any vocation is. If there's other vocations in here, the priesthood, it's the daily dying to self, that paschal mystery. And today, I'm assuming that most of you guys went to Mass today, if you didn't, but today is a feast day of St. James, one of my patron saints, and apostle and martyr, and he's the only apostle whose martyrdom is recorded in the New Testament. So thus, traditionally believing that he is the first martyr of the 12 apostles for the faith. So he was executed by King Herod by the sword. But he says in the gospel today that when I heard it, I was just struck by, St. James. Who is St. James? Just to kind of give you some background. This guy, if you read scriptures, who is he? He's this fiery dude that is like, at one point, I can't remember where they were exactly, but he had asked Jesus, Jesus, let's just get rid of these guys. Just rain down fire and brimstone on this town. Let's get. And Jesus like, hey, slow down there, slow down. So he's this, zealous, fiery guy, right? Apostle for the faith, love of Christ, and bold. And he wants to be sitting on the right hand. And this is kind of through, if you listen to the scriptures, his mom, the Jewish mother's kind of getting in there. But he's in a roundabout way, he's saying, hey, I want to be number one, Jesus. But Jesus says, whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and giving his life as a ransom. So when you look at St. James' life, St. James, he was on board with that. He decided, yep, that's what I want. And he ended up giving his life. He was the first martyr. But it wasn't just the martyr in the red sense, though. If you read the Holy Scripture, you'll kind of look past what the word is. Every day he was that white martyr, which we're all called to be, right? Not all of us can take the sword, but it's a great example. It was great to hear that today. We've come to give this talk. So that's the guy. The woman, the wife, she's the spotless bride. She's supposed to be obedient to her husband, but and obedience is who was disobedient? You guys don't need to answer, but these are things to kind of be thinking about. You hear the church say these words that are really tough and they're tough for me. Obedience. You can be obedient to anybody, right? You say that but who was disobedient? Who was that first guy that was disobedient? He fell from heaven. His name was Satan. So obedience is it makes you holy. It brings you back. And as difficult as those things are, there is an obedience. There is something. I have obedience too. It's not necessarily to my wife, but there is an exchange that happens here. Because a good man, that is being obedient to the Holy Mother Church and to his confessor, in confession, he's going to treat his Holy Mother Church, his wife, as that spotless bride and care for her. And what do you we come up in these tough situations in life, and you have to figure out what are you going to do as a married couple to lead your family.
I always make the analogy, because in this day and age, I think it's like, oh, you're submissive to your husband. What does that mean? It sounds like a bad thing, but I always make the analogy that I'm kind of like, I kind of run the household. I have my kids to take care of and everything. I have to make rules. I have to do stuff. But I'm sort of like the general, and he's the king. That's how I always say it. Like, I'm running the show. Most of the time he comes in and says, what are we doing? What do you want? What's going on? And I tell him, but if a decision needs to be made or something he sees that he doesn't want a certain way, he can say, no, we're going to do it this way. And instead of me being like, no, I run the show, because I only run the show for him. So when he comes in and says, we're going to do it this way, then I say, okay, that's fine. He's the boss. So that's sort of like, I don't know, that's how I always like in our relationship too. That, yes, I do run the show a lot of the times, but I'm still submissive to him.
But you guys don't have to. You don't have to be like, oh, I have to wait until I become religious, or I'm a wife or a husband to be able to practice these virtues. These are things you can practice as kids to your parents. Your parents say, and they say, hey, they call your name. Hey, Johnny, I need you to come and take the trash out. And you kind of waver for a second. What's happening right there? Disobedience. So, like, he's on your shoulder. He's saying, hey, you don't really have to go right now. Just say, yeah, you'll be right there, Mom. Practice going home and say, someone asks you a question, yep, what can I do for you? Immediately. And practice those little things. They may not even know them, but you're practicing so that when you get to your marriage or your religious life and there's obedience that needs to be called, that obedience is called out. When I go to confession and Father says, hey, Jamie, you need to do this. Yes, Father. Even when it hurts inside, I'm like, ah, okay, I'm doing it. I'm on it. We're over.
Okay. Do you want to wrap up?
So, yeah, I'll wrap up. The children as the faithful. We homeschool our kids. There's things that you can do in this world, but in essence, guys, really, we haven't always. Look, life is really messy. I've been through a lot. I've had divorce in my family.
Not him. He didn't get divorced.
No. Like in my childhood, like I see it as a firefighter and in public safety in my job right now. I see a lot of.
He got to have his dream job back, by the way.
Yeah, I did get to have it.
It all worked out.
But in life, it is very messy. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of sin. There's a lot of struggling people out there. And it is very difficult to be a holy family. It is very difficult to even be holy in any regard. But the biggest thing, and we've struggled with that too. And in the past 3 years, I think that we really were turned on. And you know what it was? The changing moment. I went to a retreat, and at the time I hated going to retreats because it took time from work and stuff like that. But I went to a retreat and I changed, and I realized it's my job to be the spiritual head of the family. And that's what I came. And so the past 3 years, we've gone through this transformation.
Well, and the transformation happened too when he changed. So when and it's not that we were doing anything wrong before, but he stepped it up. When we would make sure we said the rosary every night. And when we said the rosary, he would kneel. He doesn't right now because he can't, but he would kneel. And you know what happened? We never asked our kids to kneel, but they started kneeling too. He would, we would say the Angelus every day and, make sure that we do that. We make sure we say the Divine Mercy at 3 o'clock. We stop as a family and we say it. And the kids are on board because he's on board. When I'm on board, they're like, yeah, okay. When the head of the household, I don't know what it is, God made it that way, I guess. But when the head of the household is doing, the spiritual head of the family is doing what they're supposed to be doing, everything else falls into place. Everyone follows. He's the leader. He's the king. We do it.
You guys don't need to raise your hands, but how many people are saying the rosary every single day?
Put your hand
How many people are, and for those of you that are saying the rosary, how many of you are saying 2 rosaries a day? How many of you saying the Divine Mercy Chaplet? How many, like, these are things that the Angelus, those times to stop during the day, like 6, 12, 6, plus 3 o'clock, Divine Mercy, plus a family rosary. I don't ask my kids, beyond the stuff that I'm showing them right there, the physically, to do, but as a father, we live in a small house, we reject the world, right? So I've noticed that my kids, my 6-year-old is, I realized a couple days ago, is saying 2 rosaries a day on his own. I didn't ask him to do that. Why? He's stepping it up. Because
he wants to be like Dad. He's stepping it up. But
not to bore you guys anything, but just real quick, guys. If you want to have a holy family, it is not easy. Love, which means sacrifice. You need to start praying now. If any of you were my kids and you said, hey, I think I want to be, well, if you had any, whatever your vocation is I'm going to say, are you praying? Are you praying a rosary every day for your vocation? And if you think it's to the married life, then start praying for your wife or husband. You need to be open to children. Humility. There always has to be humility. There has to be obedience. And God's standards are not the world's standards. You have to reject the world. In a sense, I joke with close friends of ours that we've become a cloistered family. And what does that mean? We threw the TV out. I don't watch TV. I don't listen to pop music. All those things are little ways for Satan to get into my family that I'm trying to... Yes, we do listen to... And when I say pop music, you just have to be careful about what comes into your head. Because if it's going in your head or going in your eyes, it's staying in there. And it's something that Satan can use and bring up later on. And no, it may not be a sin right now, but it could be a near occasion of sin. And that's what you're trying to do, sanctification. Trying to stay out of sin, get to heaven. Eternal life is eternal, right? So, I mean, I can't stress that enough. Rejecting the world in any way. We have to be in the world, yes. Got to be in the world. And sometimes that, it means that I even go to work and I listen to these things and hear people, but you can reject that, guys. Everybody is saying that gay marriage is okay. Contraception is okay. Door closes on God. Door closes on God. Door closes on God. And all that grace that He has there for you, you're not getting it anymore. The grace that He's providing you is through the Holy Catholic Church. Confession, communion, okay? Go have a prayer life. And men, stand up. Be ready to practice sacrificing now. If you have a vocation to the married life, you are the guy that is going to have to lead the family. And not only is your family counting on you, but the whole church is counting on you. On all of us. To be holy. So, I don't, questions?
You can ask us whatever.
Yeah, open books. If you don't have any questions, that's fine. But if you do, Rich Olin, he knows if you feel like you need to talk to someone that's not parents or something like that or whatever, ask a question. I'm available through Rich Olin. You guys can get in touch with me. You know the Scarlatas? I think you can give them a text or something. I got questions for them. I'm sure there's hundreds of Catholic families in here that you guys can go to, but just kind of do some of those things. So that's how we do it, and that's what we're trying to do. But that's it.